Mike knelt on one knee in the small, cluttered shed at the edge of his yard, his strong fingers curled around a plank of pine. Late afternoon sunlight slanted through the open doorway, spotlighting the many tiny wood shavings on the floor. Sawdust hovered in the air. He pressed his calloused palm against the smooth surface of the wood, feeling for potential knots. Not long ago, he had relied on nothing but the friction of sandpaper against wood grain to find peace after a day's labor. Now, life felt a bit different. It was as though new textures beckoned him, inviting him to discover a sense of comfort he hadn't realized was missing. He closed his eyes, momentarily recalling the earliest moment that first sparked this change. That day, he and his girlfriend, Lucy, moved her belongings into his place. He remembered her rummaging through a box of clothes in the living room, pulling out all sorts of soft fabrics. She handed him a folded velvet skirt to set aside. The memory was still fresh, the plush texture brushing against his rough palms. After years of pressing his hands into the grit of wood and the coarseness of the tools he used daily, that gentleness seemed almost miraculous. He recalled looking down at the skirt and noticing how different its softness felt in his hands compared to everything else in his life. That was the start. He wanted to delve deeper, to explore more of those calming textures. It wasn't a conscious plan at first. He merely thought, if soft fabrics made him breathe easier after work, perhaps there was something more to it. That single velvet skirt, pressed between his calloused hands, ignited a craving for comfort he never realized he yearned for. It didn't seem like a big deal at the time, so he simply set the skirt on the nearest chair and continued helping Lucy unpack. He wanted to appear focused on the task, though his mind was fixated on how foreign and fascinating that smoothness felt. That night, after Lucy fell asleep, he found himself quietly drifting down the hallway to the closet where she had hung her clothes. It felt a little odd, he couldn't deny that, but curiosity led him onward. He reached out to brush his fingertips across her silk blouse, letting the delicate threads slip softly over his skin. In that moment, he wasn't thinking about wearing it. He was simply wondering if that soothing effect could be captured, if more textures might help him unwind after a day he spent wrestling with raw timber and dull tools. He told himself it was just a passing curiosity, yet as days bled into weeks, he noticed how his mind kept straying back to those gentle fabrics. Lucy was a designer who loved to experiment with different textiles and clothes. The edges of her scarves, the shimmery folds of satin blouses, the intricately embroidered details on her fancy dresses, they all tempted him in the same way. When Lucy was out and the house was quiet, he would sometimes open the closet door, run his hands over the clothes, then close it again. A voice in his head asked, "Why does this feel so calming?" Mike's daily routine once revolved around building wooden frames for houses, repairing damaged floorboards, and constructing rustic furniture for the local shops. Although he took pride in his craft, there was a harshness to his world, a repetitive friction he could never fully escape. His boots crunched on splinters and nails, his jacket always smelled of sawdust, and his fingertips were constantly scuffed. Even at home, those coarse edges lingered. The softness of Lucy's clothes teased him with a possibility of relief from all the roughness that had grown normal to him. During lunch breaks at the workshop, while his colleagues chatted about sports or teased each other about upcoming weekend plans, Mike found himself daydreaming. He imagined the swish of silk or the smoothness of satin. It was never about wanting to look a certain way. No, it was always the tactile sensation that drew him in. Only later did he realize he wanted to wear those fabrics himself, so he could immerse in that comforting feeling. At first, it was just small moments of contact, like slipping on a satin robe Lucy left in the bathroom while she went to check her phone in the living room. He let it brush across his arms, in awe of the difference between that airy softness and his own weathered skin. Eventually, Mike decided he had to own something of his own. He wasn't brave enough to walk into a department store and browse the women's clothing section, worried a neighbor or fellow carpenter might spot him. Instead, he ordered satin pajamas online. It took an entire day of scrolling and hesitation before he clicked the purchase button. If Lucy had been around to see him do it, he might have frozen. He told himself it was only for private moments at home, a harmless indulgence. Once they arrived, sealed in a plain cardboard package, it felt like receiving a precious gift meant just for him. He tried them on after work. Looking at himself in the bedroom mirror felt strange. The pajamas were a delicate shade of pale lavender and clung lightly to his skin, offering none of the friction he was accustomed to. Yet he was enthralled by the sensation. It was the kind of comfort he'd never experienced with his usual flannel or scratchy cotton t-shirts. He didn't stay in them long that first evening. A flicker of nervousness made him change back into regular clothes before Lucy came home. Still, those few quiet minutes in satin left his mind feeling uncluttered. Days turned into weeks, and the thought of textures began to consume him. His time on the construction sites only reinforced the desire. He'd spend hours gripping chisels, drilling screws into planks, and hauling heavy wood beams. By late afternoon, his shoulders ached, and his hands stung with fine cuts and splinters. The idea of slipping into something silken or velvety at the end of the day felt like an anticipated reward. He ordered more pieces, another set of satin pajamas, a couple of silky shirts. This new world expanded in his closet, hidden behind his stacks of flannels and worn-out hoodies. One evening, Lucy arrived home earlier than expected. Mike was in the bedroom, absent-mindedly running his hand down a silk blouse he had ordered for himself. It wasn't that he planned to show it off. He simply appreciated the feel of it. The moment she walked into the room and saw him, he froze. Lucy blinked twice, not quite sure what she was witnessing. Her eyes flicked from the blouse draped over his arm to his wide-eyed expression. She set her handbag down slowly, sensing the weight of his unease. "Mike," she began, her voice soft but puzzled. I had no idea you liked this kind of top." She didn't sound angry, but there was real uncertainty in her tone. His ears burned, and words failed him. All he could do was gently place the blouse on the bed, as if it were a fragile relic. I've been trying some softer things," he stammered. He felt silly the moment the words left his mouth, but there was no time to lie or hide. He wanted to be truthful. Lucy leaned against the dresser, arms folded carefully, her brow furrowed, but her concern seemed more about understanding than judging. "So, you like the way it feels?" He nodded, swallowing hard. "I work with rough things all day. The wood, the tools. It's so different from all this," he said, gesturing to the blouse. "It's comforting." Lucy stepped closer. She ran her hand over the blouse, feeling the same luxurious texture. Then she looked up at him, her eyes bright with compassion. "I never considered that you might need something like this," she said gently. "I'm not upset. I just want to make sense of it." Relief spread through Mike's chest, though it was tangled with vulnerability. "It's not about changing who I am," he told her. "I just need something to balance the roughness of my day. It's like a therapy of sorts. It makes me feel calm." Lucy paused, thinking. "Therapy. Okay. You know what? If it helps you, then maybe it's just that." She folded the blouse and handed it back to him. "Honestly, I had no idea you'd even be open to this kind of thing, but I guess now I see why. As long as you're not hiding it from me, I'm okay if it gives you some peace." He pulled her into a loose hug, the blouse draped over his arm. He told her, "I was scared you'd find it weird." She let out a gentle laugh. "We all need something to unwind, right? Some people listen to music, some meditate. You happen to enjoy softer fabrics. Let's just call it your texture therapy." That phrase stuck. Texture therapy. In that simple supportive comment, Lucy gave name to this calming habit. She didn't berate him or look at him as though he were a stranger. Instead, she embraced the idea that maybe her strong, capable carpenter had another side to his life, one that offered comfort. From that point forward, they approached it with honesty. Mike mentioned that he had discovered he liked wearing satin loungewear, and Lucy made sure he had space in the closet to hang the pieces he bought. On weekends, if they had no visitors, he sometimes wore his soft pajama pants around the house, letting them brush gently against his legs while he brewed coffee or read a newspaper at the kitchen table. Lucy observed him in these moments and teased him affectionately. "You look more relaxed already," she would say. And she was right. It was as if the tension of a long week melted away faster. Still, outside their home, Mike kept this part of himself hidden. It wasn't that he felt ashamed. It just seemed complicated to talk about it with coworkers who might not understand. Many of them were the joking type who saw the world in very traditional ways. He worried they would make fun of the idea, or worse, treat him differently. So he continued to show up at the construction sites dressed in his tough denim overalls and steel-toed boots, wiping sweat from his forehead with a bandana, focusing on the job at hand. He laughed politely at jokes, had a beer with the team after finishing a big job, and avoided mentioning that at home he was trying to figure out if satin or velvet was more soothing on any particular day. But small secrets have a way of lingering in the mind, and Mike sometimes wondered if he would ever open up about it. Lucy's acceptance made him feel safer about who he was, but he remembered that not everyone saw things the way she did. Still, each day that he came home caked in dust and grit, he felt grateful knowing he had a drawer of delicate fabrics waiting for him. Sometimes he stepped into the shower first, washing away the day's sweat, then slipped on a satin robe. Other nights, he put on some music, lit a small candle, and let the fabric calm him as he took slow, deep breaths. One Saturday evening, Lucy invited a couple of friends over, Mia and Trevor, both of them longtime companions from her college days. Mike tried to busy himself grilling burgers in the backyard while Lucy chatted with them inside. But eventually he joined them in the living room, still wearing a button-up shirt, but secretly wishing he could slip into something softer. He sank into the worn couch cushion. The conversation turned to the latest interior design trends, a subject that piqued Lucy's interest. She was explaining the differences between mid-century modern furniture and her more eclectic style. As Lucy described her upcoming design project, the corners of Mia's mouth curved in a knowing grin. She was looking at Mike. "So, Lucy, rumor has it Mike here is quite the craftsman. I'd love to see some of his work if you still have any prototypes around." Lucy raised an eyebrow and looked at Mike. "You should show them the rocking chair you built last month," she suggested. "It's upstairs in the spare room." Mike hesitated, forcing a smile. "Sure, I can show you," he said. He led them up the stairs. Mia and Trevor marveled at the handcrafted design. He felt a spark of pride as they traced a hand along the smooth arch of the wooden rails. Over the last few months, he had poured hours into ensuring the chair had a perfectly balanced tilt. While they admired his work, Lucy gently touched the back of his arm and whispered, "You're talented in so many ways, you know." Her words were kind, and though she didn't elaborate, Mike recognized the deeper meaning behind that supportive statement. She accepted all sides of him. The following day, Lucy was in the living room, flipping through a style magazine, when she looked up. "Would you ever consider using softer fabrics in your woodwork somehow?" she asked. "Like, making furniture that incorporates plush upholstery or something that blends your two worlds." Mike blinked, intrigued by the idea. "Never thought of that," he admitted. "But maybe a bench with a satin cushion, or a lounge chair with velvet armrests. That could be interesting. He ran a palm over the stubble on his chin. It'd be a new kind of challenge, but I like the idea. Lucy closed the magazine and looked at him, eyes shining. People pay a lot for custom comfort. Imagine offering them something that feels as good as it looks. She then held her hand out to him, inviting him to sit beside her. He did, the old couch squeaking under his weight. "I've always appreciated your skill, Mike," she said, letting her voice drop to a quiet warmth. "But I love that you also appreciate delicate things. It's unexpectedly charming." He slipped an arm around her shoulders. "I'm glad you see it that way. Some folks might think it strange." She leaned against him. "Well, you've got me in your corner. That's what matters, right?" He nodded, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Absolutely." Over the next few weeks, a new idea blossomed in Mike's mind. He wanted to create a line of furniture pieces that combined his love for refined woodwork with touches of the soft fabrics he had grown to appreciate. His first experiment involved a simple wooden ottoman onto which he carefully attached a plush velvet cushion. He chose a deep burgundy color that contrasted beautifully with the natural tones of polished oak. Mike took his time selecting the right velvet. He wanted something that gave that same comforting feeling he got from Lucy's skirt on that first day. He worked in private, mostly late at night or when Lucy was out meeting clients. He found himself running his hand along the ottoman's seat even before it was fully assembled, smiling at the contrast between the sturdy oak base and the buttery velvet top. It felt symbolic of his life, the strong, rugged side blending with the gentle aspect he once kept hidden. One evening, he brought Lucy out to his workshop, flipping on a single lamp overhead. The warm glow illuminated the finished ottoman. Lucy let out a small gasp of delight. "Oh, Mike, that's beautiful," she said, stepping forward. She traced her fingertips across the velvet. "It's so smooth, and the woodwork is so precise." He felt pride swell in his chest. "I tried to capture that feeling I get with the fabrics, the sense of relief, of comfort. I want it to be more than just an ottoman." Lucy immediately perched on it, testing how it felt under her legs. "I love it. It's sturdy but luxuriously soft. People would definitely want this kind of piece." Her eyes sparkled. "Have you thought about making more and selling them?" Mike shrugged, part hopeful and part uncertain. "I have, but I'm not sure if I'm ready to explain to everyone where the inspiration came from." Lucy considered this, a soft expression crossing her face. "Well, you can always talk about it simply as your passion for combining aesthetics and comfort. You don't have to spill every personal detail unless you want to. The piece speaks for itself, doesn't it?" He breathed a sigh of relief. "You're right." As months passed, Mike gradually incorporated more of these ideas into his carpentry work. He designed chairs with plush cushions, benches lined with silky upholstery, and even small wooden boxes lined with velvety fabric for storing jewelry. All the while, his own private collection of comfortable clothing steadily expanded. He enjoyed a range of fabrics, satin shirts, velvet lounge pants, even fine knit sweaters with a softness that soothed his skin. Now and then, Lucy would surprise him with a new robe or a plush cardigan, a silent nod that she understood what he needed. Their evenings settled into an easy rhythm. After dinner, Lucy read or scrolled through design inspirations, while Mike switched out of his denim and put on something gentle. If Lucy's friends were around, he stuck to his usual clothes, though he felt a pleasant rush at the knowledge that soon enough he could slip away to that calmer space. He no longer felt guilt over it. Instead, there was an undercurrent of gratitude. Lucy had embraced it, and that made a world of difference. Outside the house, however, the reality was more complicated. One autumn afternoon, Mike was on a break at a local diner with his colleague Vince, who was known for his loud humor. Vince leaned in over a cup of coffee and said, "So Mike, I heard Lucy's been telling folks you're making some fancy new furniture, velvet seats and all. That's a hoot. Didn't think you'd go all fancy on us." Mike's stomach clenched, but he kept his expression neutral. "It's not that fancy," he replied. "Just trying out some new design ideas that might appeal to different customers. Gotta stand out somehow." Vince snorted. "I guess. Just make sure you don't show up wearing a dress when you deliver them," he said, rolling his eyes with a chuckle. The comment landed harder than Mike expected. He felt the heat rising in his cheeks, but he forced a laugh. "Yeah, sure," he replied shortly, hoping Vince wouldn't pick up on the tension in his voice. His friend's joke stung because it skimmed too close to the truth, even though Vince had no clue what was really going on. Mike swallowed back his discomfort and decided to keep his personal life firmly in the realm of home. That night, after showering off the day's grime, Mike told Lucy about Vince's comment. Lucy was brushing her hair in the bathroom, the reflection of her thoughtful expression visible in the mirror. "People sometimes say things without meaning harm," she said. "It doesn't mean they'd never understand, but it's your choice how much you want to share." Mike nodded, switching off the bathroom light as they moved to the bedroom. He picked up a satin pajama set from the dresser. "I'm not ready to share that yet," he admitted. "I'm not even sure how to have that conversation with the guys." Lucy stepped over and rested her hand on his arm. "You don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with," she said, and the gentle tone of her voice calmed him. "You still have me, and you still have your texture therapy at home." Hearing that phrase, texture therapy, reminded him how important this was for him, how it went beyond a fleeting whim. He gave Lucy a grateful nod, then pulled on the satin pajama set, feeling the tension in his shoulders dissipate with the first soft touch of the fabric. A few weeks later, Lucy organized a small open house to show off some of Mike's furniture to a potential client. She set everything up in a modest, well-lit space in town that artists and craftsmen frequently used for showcases. They arranged the velvet-cushioned ottomans and chairs, along with a few tables that featured plush liners in the drawers. The invitation simply described it as comfort-driven woodwork by Mike, local carpenter with a fresh perspective. Mike spent the early morning double-checking the pieces, smoothing out any wrinkles in the upholstery, and wiping away specks of dust. He was nervous. Lucy tried to soothe him, pointing out each piece's unique beauty. "They're going to love these," she reassured him. "They're creative, well-built, and more comfortable than anything they'll find in a regular furniture store." As the doors opened, people trickled in. Some were curious local residents. Others were designers or potential customers Lucy had invited. Mike greeted them politely, explaining how he had wanted to combine the solidity of wood with softer upholstery. He demonstrated the rocking motion of a velvet-lined rocker, pointing out the plush seat. He watched visitors' faces light up when they sat down and felt the cushion cradling them gently. A tall woman in a sleek suit approached him, a thoughtful smile on her face. She introduced herself as Camilla, an interior decorator looking for unique pieces. "Your designs are quite remarkable," she said. "May I ask where the inspiration came from?" Mike hesitated a second, but Lucy, standing a step behind him, gave him a small nod of encouragement. "I've worked with wood my whole life," he said, choosing his words carefully. "But I realized I wanted to do something that felt soothing, too. After a day of working with rough materials, there's relief in something softer. So I merged the two ideas." Camilla seemed intrigued. "It's an interesting approach. Often furniture is either sturdy or soft, but rarely both in a balanced way. You've managed to create a harmony between these two aspects." He smiled, feeling a new wave of confidence surge within him. "That's exactly what I aim for," he replied. "I'm glad you appreciate it." The open house ended up being a success. Several visitors placed orders, and Mike was thrilled to realize this wasn't just a passing idea. People genuinely wanted his pieces. As he and Lucy packed up at the end of the day, he felt an energy within him he hadn't experienced in a long time. It wasn't just about the sales. It was about finally seeing how his private pursuit of comfort could merge productively with the craft that defined his life. That evening, they returned home, tired but happy. Lucy flopped onto the couch with a contented sigh, and Mike stepped into the bedroom to change. He opened his dresser, smiling when he saw the neatly folded satin pajamas and soft robes. Without a second thought, he put them on, sinking into that immediate sense of ease. As he moved back to the living room, Lucy spotted him in his comfortable attire and patted the spot next to her. He sat down, and she leaned her head on his shoulder. "I'm really proud of you," she murmured. "You've come a long way from the guy who only wore jeans and flannel." He chuckled. "I still wear those," he pointed out. "But yeah, something's shifted in my life. It feels good." Lucy nudged him gently with her elbow, a teasing light in her eyes. "I also love how my fancy pieces aren't disappearing from my closet anymore," she joked. "Ever since you built your own wardrobe, you've left my silky tops alone." Heat rushed to his cheeks, and he laughed. "Guilty," he admitted. "But your clothes were the reason I figured out I wanted my own." Lucy reached out and took his hand. "And it's wonderful that you did." For all the progress he made, Mike still found it intimidating to bring up his new lifestyle with others, especially old friends. One Sunday afternoon, he invited an old buddy, Joel, over to the house to watch a football game. Joel was an easygoing person, but also someone who teased relentlessly when given a chance. Mike found himself cleaning up his personal items around the living room, making sure no silky robes lay draped over chairs. He stuffed them in a drawer in the bedroom to keep them out of sight. Joel arrived with a case of beer, and they settled in front of the TV. After the initial conversation about the game, Joel asked, "So man, Lucy tells me you've been branching out with your carpentry. Says you're sewing stuff onto the wood. That right?" Mike managed a casual shrug. "Something like that," he replied, sipping from his bottle. "I've been upholstering some custom pieces. People like how comfortable they are." Joel let out a short laugh. "You never fail to surprise. For a guy who used to wear the same old ripped flannel, you sure have changed. Next thing you know, you'll be telling me you own a closet full of dresses." Mike froze just long enough for Joel to sense the awkwardness, but quickly forced a grin. "Yeah, imagine that," he said, trying to remain lighthearted. He knew Joel was just jabbing in a typical buddy way, but it hit a nerve. He breathed steadily, trying to remind himself that it was okay to keep this private. Not everyone had to know. Joel raised an eyebrow, noticing Mike's hesitation. "You all right, man? I'm messing with you, don't take it personally," he said, giving Mike a friendly punch on the shoulder. Mike exhaled, nodding. "Yeah, I'm good." He changed the subject to the team's offense, and soon Joel was engrossed in analyzing stats. But the interaction left Mike's stomach in a knot, reminding him of that lingering fear about how people would react if they found out. After Joel headed home, Lucy found Mike standing silently in the hallway, looking a bit deflated. She brushed a hand over his back. "Joel's just being Joel," she said gently. "If you ever did decide to be more open, the people who matter would find a way to handle it. But that's your choice, no one else's." He gave her hand a light squeeze. "I know. I just guess I'm not ready for the sideways glances. I don't want to lose friends over something that seems personal." Lucy nodded, threading her fingers through his. "Then don't rush it. In time, you might feel differently, or you might not. Either way, you have every right to keep it to yourself." Things settled into a new normal. Mike's small furniture business grew through word of mouth. Local design enthusiasts praised the blend of craftsmanship and comfort, and Lucy proudly told her own clients about her partner's abilities. Mike spent long hours in the workshop, carefully shaping wood, then selecting materials that would provide just the right, gentle sensation. By the end of each workday, his shoulders and arms carried the usual burden of physical labor, but his soul felt a little lighter, knowing that once he stepped inside the house, he could slip on something soft and let the stress dissolve. Over time, Lucy's playful support grew even more. She began leaving small notes near the clothes he wore for relaxation. Sometimes they were silly. "Don't forget, velvet keeps you warm on a cold night." And other times they were appreciative. "I love how serene you look wearing this." She caught him smiling at one such note pinned to a new satin dressing gown. He kept it in the pocket as a lucky charm. Months passed and word spread about Mike's furniture. Eventually, a magazine focused on local artisans requested an interview. Mike felt the usual mixture of excitement and apprehension. When the journalist, a friendly woman named Jennifer, arrived at his workshop, she asked about the inspiration for his designs. Mike gave a reserved version of his story, talking about the contrast between rough wood and softer upholstery. He mentioned that it was simply an idea that made sense, given the way people might crave relief from everyday demands. Jennifer, who had an observant eye, seemed to catch a hint of something unspoken. She pushed a little further. "So, do you personally enjoy these textures a lot? It almost sounds like you have a passion for fabric as strong as your passion for wood." Mike shifted slightly, wiping sweat from his brow. "I do," he said, choosing his words carefully. "When your job involves constant grit, you can develop a fondness for gentler things." Jennifer nodded, a spark of understanding crossing her face. "I see. That's actually a lovely insight," she said, jotting down notes. "Many folks never think about that contrast." He kept his answers brief but honest. He didn't reveal the entire story, but he sensed that if the article mentioned his appreciation of soft fabrics, it might at least encourage some readers to see that side of him sympathetically. Lucy popped into the workshop partway through, bringing them both lemonade and offering a bright smile whenever Mike struggled with a question. When the article was published, it featured photos of Mike's wood and velvet creations, praising the unexpected fusion of strength and softness. The piece lightly touched on how Mike personally valued texture in all aspects of life. Reading it, Mike felt a quiet pride. He no longer had to hide the fact that this meant something to him. At the same time, the article was tasteful. It didn't declare to the town that he wore satin pajamas, but it hinted that he was a carpenter who appreciated gentle things. People's responses were mostly positive. Some neighbors teased him a bit, but it was good-natured. Others admired him for thinking outside the box. Over a beer at a local pub, one acquaintance commented, "Never thought a big guy like you would be so into upholstery, but hey, I guess it's working for you." Mike gave a genuine grin. "It's definitely been a journey." He chose his words, thinking carefully to avoid terms that might open the door to deeper questions. "I'm enjoying it, though. Life's too short to stick to only one thing." Later that evening, Lucy and Mike sat on their back porch, a mild breeze drifting over them. He wore a knit sweater he had purchased online, one that was unbelievably smooth to the touch. Lucy snuggled next to him, both of them gazing out at the darkening sky. "I'm happy for you," she murmured. "You found something that brings you comfort, and you're even managing to share a piece of that with the world." Mike slipped an arm around her waist, inhaling the subtle night air. "I never saw my life turning out this way," he admitted. "But looking back, it all started so simply. All it took was me touching that velvet skirt of yours." She raised an eyebrow. You know, it's still hanging in the closet if you ever want to reminisce, she teased with a playful grin. He snorted a laugh. I might just do that, he teased back. They lapsed into a companionable silence, watching the stars flicker above. It struck Mike how, in a few short months, everything had changed. He still woke at dawn to head to construction sites, still hammered nails, measured beams, and carried planks of wood. Yet he had this other element in his life, a newfound appreciation for fabrics, for softness. It was oddly comforting to know that neither side was contradictory. They were two aspects of the same man. A few nights later, Lucy decided to try something new. She set up a small corner of the living room with cushions, blankets, and one of Mike's velvet chairs. She invited him to join her there after dinner. When he walked in, changed into his usual satin pants and a soft shirt, he saw Lucy seated cross-legged on the floor, smiling at him. "Thought we could make this our little relaxation corner," she said, patting a cushion next to her. "We can talk about our day, do some reading, or just sit quietly." He lowered himself onto the cushion beside her. "You really go all out," he commented, noticing how even the lighting was softer, courtesy of warm lamps rather than the overhead fluorescent. She shrugged with a small grin. "I've been taking notes from you. If textures are so important, maybe the whole atmosphere matters too." Lucy leaned back, resting her palms on the plush rug. "If we're going to chase comfort, let's make it as lovely as possible." The two of them spent the evening trading stories about their day, occasionally falling into companionable quiet as they sank deeper into the comfortable softness around them. Lucy dozed off a bit, her head lolling against his shoulder. He watched her breathe, the dim light casting flickering shadows around the room. Something about the moment felt profoundly peaceful. There was no requirement to pretend, no anxiety about what anyone else might think. It was just him and Lucy, living a life that fit them both. In the weeks that followed, Mike took on a few bigger commissions. His workshop bustled. Friends who visited praised his designs. One day, Vince dropped by unannounced to pick up a custom wooden table Mike had promised to sand down. He arrived just as Mike was checking the velvet seats he had stacked in a corner, making sure everything was in good condition. Vince caught sight of the richly hued cushions and whistled. "You're really into that fancy stuff, huh?" Mike set down a cushion, his shoulders tensing slightly, but he turned to face his friend and spoke calmly. "Yeah, I guess I am. It's been good for business, plus I like it." Vince, caught off guard by Mike's directness, scratched the back of his head. "Well, it looks nice. We can't all keep using rough benches forever, right? This is probably more comfortable." Mike nodded. "Exactly." Vince looked around, his gaze lingering on the subtle array of fabrics scattered about. "Well, good for you, man. Must be good money in it. Anyway, about that table?" Mike relaxed, exhaling as he realized Vince wasn't about to launch into any mocking tirade. "In the back," he said, gesturing for Vince to follow him. Later, as Vince loaded the table onto his truck, he gave Mike a pat on the back. "People need comfort, especially these days," he said in a casual tone. "You keep doing what you're doing." Those words stuck with Mike. He thought back to the nights he spent wearing stiff, scratchy work clothes even after his shift, how it always left him feeling on edge, as if he could never fully unwind. Now, a sense of balance existed in his life that he had never known. On that next Sunday, Mike and Lucy shared a quiet morning at the kitchen table. Sunlight beamed through the windows, illuminating dust motes dancing through the air. Mike wore a comfortable sweater, Lucy a loose robe. Between them lay plates of toast and fresh fruit. They talked about the future. Lucy mentioned possibly collaborating with him on a furniture line where she would handle the design aesthetics while he managed the carpentry and upholstery. "Think about it," she said, excited. "We could create an entire collection, Chairs, ottomans, couches, pillows, the whole package. Mike considered it. It sounds ambitious, but if this continues to grow, it might actually work. He tapped his fingers lightly on the table, imagining a brand that combined both of their skills. I can already think of a few ways we can pitch it to potential buyers, Lucy continued, leaning forward. Explain how you saw the value in comforting fabrics because of your experiences out in the workshop, day after day. I think people respond to genuine stories. He couldn't hide a small grin. It is genuine, that's for sure. He paused, drumming his fingers. You'd be okay with me being more vocal about, wearing softer clothes myself? Sometimes I wonder if I should open up or not. Lucy shrugged, a warm laugh dancing in her eyes. That's up to you, Mike. People like authenticity, but you also deserve to keep certain parts of your life private if you want. He nodded. I'm not rushing, but yeah, I suppose I'd like to share someday. At least enough so that I'm not hiding it anymore. Lucy's phone buzzed with an incoming message, reminding her she had an appointment soon. She downed the last of her coffee and gave him a quick kiss on the cheek. We'll figure it out one step at a time. No need to rush. He watched as she darted off to get ready, leaving him alone with the half-eaten toast on their plates. The sunlight touched his sweater, highlighting the soft weave of the fabric. He remembered a time, not all that long ago, when the idea of wearing such clothing was unimaginable. Yet here he was, living in that reality. That afternoon, Mike drove out to the local lumber yard to pick up some new planks. As he hauled them into the back of his truck, he caught a glimpse of his reflection in the window. He was wearing his typical work boots and jeans, but under his flannel was a soft undershirt Lucy had gotten him. It was barely visible, just a hint of a smoother texture at the collar. He paused, thinking about the dual nature of his existence. Tough carpenter on the outside, a hidden sanctuary of softness just beneath. He liked that contrast. When he returned home, Lucy was already back, rummaging through her own selection of fabrics for a design project. He set down the wood outside, then found her in the living room surrounded by swatches of cloth. She looked up, waving a piece of shimmery satin. I'm deciding on a color scheme, she explained. Need your opinion. I know you like these textures as much as I do. Mike kneeled beside her. She pressed the satin swatch into his hand. He rubbed it gently between his thumb and forefinger, that comforting shiver running along his spine once again. Feels great, he said, nodding. Might be too reflective for a big piece of furniture, but it could be perfect for smaller accents. Lucy grinned. Couldn't have said it better. I'll keep that in mind. She set aside the swatch, then held up another, a velvety teal. And this one? He liked that too. They spent the next hour comparing fabrics, brainstorming ideas for merging them with sturdy wood frames. Sometimes Lucy turned to him and asked, "Does it have that soothing effect you're going for?" She understood that was his main criterion, beyond mere looks. It was in these small moments that Mike realized how profoundly Lucy had supported him. She didn't just permit his fascination with soft fabrics. She welcomed it, let it flourish. She appreciated that this new habit wasn't about transforming who he was, but about giving him a refuge from the daily grind. He found himself wanting to do the same for her, to be supportive of her creative endeavors, her design passions, and her need to see the world in vivid colors and textures. As twilight approached, Lucy suggested they make dinner together. Mike insisted on wearing one of his beloved satin lounge shirts while chopping vegetables, ignoring Lucy's playful warning about possible stains. They teased each other like kids, Lucy occasionally flicking droplets of water at him from the sink. He just laughed it off, the shirt shining faintly under the kitchen light. The comfort on his skin felt like reassurance that he was free to be himself, at least here in their home with the woman who understood him. "Careful with that onion. You don't want tears dripping onto your fancy satin," Lucy joked, bumping him with her hip as she reached for a cutting board. "I'll try not to cry," he shot back, holding the onion at arm's length and blinking rapidly in mock melodrama. They both cracked up, the tension of the outside world dissolving. At the end of the evening, dishes cleaned and the kitchen smelling of fresh basil and tomatoes, they settled on their couch. Lucy turned on a mellow radio station, letting soft music drift through the living room. Mike draped an arm around her shoulders as she nestled closer, resting her head against his chest. She gently traced a finger along the edge of his satin shirt. "Thank you," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Her brow furrowed slightly as she looked up at him. "For what?" He took a moment, running his free hand through her hair. "For letting me explore all this, and for calling it texture therapy. You gave me a way to talk about it without, making it feel like something bizarre." Lucy's lips curved into a warm smile. "You don't have to thank me for that. I want you to be happy, Mike. And seeing how calm you get when you can indulge in this, well, it makes me happy too." He pulled her closer. The gentle hush of the radio played on, and for a moment he took in the simple beauty of their life together. In another era, or under different circumstances, maybe it would have been harder for him to embrace this desire for softer things. But times had changed, and so had he. He closed his eyes, letting the music envelop him. He felt Lucy's breath steady and contented against him. He recalled the first jolt of intrigue when that velvet skirt grazed his hands, how foreign and almost enchanting it seemed. He thought of the nights he spent ordering satin pajamas in secret, worried about how Lucy might react. And now here they were, side by side, forging a relationship that balanced practicality and warmth. His carpentry and her design sense meshed so well that even the weight of old doubts felt lighter. The next morning dawned bright. Mike rose to find Lucy still asleep. He slid into the workshop out back, planning to get in a couple of hours of work before the day's obligations called. He set a plank on the workbench, measured carefully, and started sawing. Tiny dust motes swirled around him in the beams of sunlight. The repetitive rasp of the saw against wood soothed him in its own way. This was the world he had always known, the grit, the weight, the labor. He paused mid-saw, wiping a sheen of sweat from his forehead. His mind drifted to the new chair design he was working on, one that would feature a wide seat covered with soft knit fabric. He pictured how it would feel under his palms, and in that visualization, he found motivation. When Lucy eventually wandered in, hair tousled, wearing one of his old t-shirts, she gave him a sleepy smile. "Couldn't wait to get started, huh?" He grinned back. "Nope. I've got some new ideas to try, and I'd like to finish one before lunch." Lucy walked over, inspecting the plank he'd been sawing. If you get that done soon, I can help you pick the perfect knit for it. I have some swatches that might knock your socks off." He laughed, setting the saw aside. "Let's do it. The sooner we pick, the sooner I can see how it feels." By mid-afternoon, they had chosen a soft gray knit with subtle ribbing for the chair seat. Lucy left to run errands, and Mike stayed behind, meticulously stapling the knit to the wooden frame. He stepped back to survey his work, feeling that gratifying flicker in his chest whenever he created something new. He sank onto the seat carefully, letting the soft knit embrace him. It was perfect. In that solitary moment, he was content. Everything about his journey, from the unplanned discovery of a velvet skirt to the building of his custom line of furniture, felt connected. He no longer saw a divide between work Mike and comfort-seeking Mike. Both sides shaped his life, enabling him to bring artistry and solace to people's homes. When Lucy returned, she found him seated in the new chair, fingertips resting on the padded armrests. She didn't have to ask if he was proud. His face said it all. She stepped closer and pressed a kiss to his cheek. "Looks like another winner," she said softly. Mike stood, rotating his shoulders to loosen them after hunching over his project. "I think so," he said. He walked over to her, the quiet hum of satisfaction spreading through him. He noted that fine sheen of sawdust dusting his arms, his old, familiar companion. He also felt the memory of the knit fabric beneath his fingers, the contrast once again. Lucy took his hand, drawing him back inside. He followed, heart brimming with a sense of homecoming. In the hallway, he saw the reflection of his comfortable clothes in the mirror, something he wore with no apology now. He glanced at Lucy and caught her watching him, eyes soft with affection. Their life had become a blend of textures, both tangible and emotional, that gave each day a certain richness. Though the future still held questions, Mike felt ready for whatever might come next. He had his workshop, his passion, the unwavering support of Lucy, and a growing acceptance of what brought him calm. And each day, as he stepped out of that workshop and into the quiet sanctuary of their home, he knew that, like the sturdy oak supporting a velvet cushion, the rough edges of life could be softened by an inviting, gentle embrace.
Did you like the story? Hit that like button and tell me what you thought in the comments. Do you want to hear more stories? Subscribe and hit the bell. For exclusive content and early access, check out our Patreon. You can find the link in the description, or you can watch any of the videos shown on my right. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.